Hello everyone, and welcome to my first ever video with a voiceover. I've been avoiding doing this, but here we are. It is what it is. Today we're going to install a balance complete onto the balance cock and then install the entire balance assembly into the movement. So without further ado, let's get started. I've got this little tool here and we're going to begin. Here's a picture of what a completed balance assembly looks like. Feel free to pause the video here and familiarize yourself with some of these terms. This little tool is actually made of molded plastic. There are different versions for different movements. This one is for the Seiko 4R series, also known as the TMI NH series. So first we have to align the stud carrier with the edge. Okay. Then we'll use this little pin to push the stud into place. Everything seems to be working fine, so let's continue. Now, we'll take out a new balance wheel, or rather a new balance complete. We have to lower it in gently so that the balance staff enters the upper pivot hole where it rests on the upper jewel. At the same time, we're going to need to make sure the hairspring slips between the regulator pins. The regulator changes the effective length of the hairspring, which adjusts the rate of the watch. The position of the stud carrier affects the beat error. Okay. It looks like everything is fitting into place. Of course, these parts are incredibly small and delicate, so we have to be patient. Okay, let's carefully maneuver it while making sure the hairspring stays between the regulator pins. Now we need to align the stud carrier with the stud while making sure the balance staff remains seated in the pivot hole. Alright, let's do it. These tweezers are made of brass. They're non-magnetic, but I think they're a little too large for this kind of work. I did buy a proper pair of watchmaker's brass tweezers, but I didn't have them when I recorded this video, so I had to make do with these. Okay. Let's give it a little nudge. Is that working? No, it popped back out. I apologize for the glare. I filmed this in the evening, so the lighting wasn't ideal. There we go. That looks aligned. No. Let's try using a small screwdriver instead. This should be a little easier to work with. There we go. That looks more or less aligned. Let's test it out. And there it is. It's snapped into place. Fantastic. Let's carefully pull it back out and make sure everything is still holding. Okay. Now, let's place it in the balance tack for one final check. Perfect. The stud is securely attached and the hairspring is correctly positioned between the regulator pins. Here's another picture of what we're dealing with when installing the balance assembly into the movement. Okay, so here's the pallet fork, and there is the lower pivot hole. The balance staff has to fit into the lower pivot hole while the impulse jewel has to engage the fork of the pallet fork. Let's gently lower it into place. The balance wheel has to fit under the train bridge without touching any of the other wheels. Perfect, it's underneath. Now we need to make sure everything is aligned properly. Balance staff is in the pivot hole, but I don't think the impulse jewel has engaged the pallet fork yet. No. let's try again. We'll lift it back out, carefully lower it in one more time. You have to be extremely gentle during this step. The balance assembly is probably the most delicate component in the entire watch. Okay, there we go. Let's rotate it slightly and gently lower it. There we are. Give it a little nudge. And there we are. Excellent. It's moving. Now, let's make sure everything is fully seated. No, not quite. Let's give it a tiny nudge. There we go. Now it's seated properly. Next, we'll install the screw. So, here's the Seiko balance screw. Every screw in this movement is a different size or length, so when you disassemble one of these movements, it's important to keep track of which screw goes where. Okay. When tightening the screw, don't rush and don't over-tighten. A good rule of thumb is to tighten it until you feel resistance. Then give it just the slightest additional turn. That's all it needs. And that. There we go, and stop. Perfect. It's alive. Alive! So, everything has been installed correctly, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. This movement will probably end up in a simple everyday beater watch, something I can wear to the gym without worrying about it. Thanks for watching.